What is good, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Dynasty. Today, we are back for the usual Dynasty Trade Review show. It is the beginning of the month today, July 1st. So with that being said, we have a bunch of trades from June that you guys made in your Dynasty Fantasy Football Leagues. You submitted them into the Discord. There is a free Discord linked in the description. So if you have not ever submitted trades to our trade show, you can do that in the description down below. But it would not be Let's Talk Dynasty, and we could not review some of these trades without the guy that is the wave maker, the hot taker. We got to bring him into the building, MFGDs.
All right, man. Wave taker, hot take maker in the building, MFGDs. What's up?
What up, man? I figured I'd throw something in there because the last couple trade shows, they've been saying you got some hot take.
Look, man, I'm not trying to call hot takes. I just take it as it is, man.
Hey, I call it how I see it. That's the way it is. If you don't like it, you don't like it. Sorry. But look, we got 10 trades today, so we'll hop right into them. We won't waste a ton of time. But I'm gonna put this up on the screen right here. And this is our first trade. It is submitted by Luke. Actually, I think it was submitted by Aaron Roblyer. Not really sure. I guess it doesn't really matter. We'll just review it anyways. It is a 12-team Superflex half PPR and a start 10. What we got here is Jaylen Waddle being received for JSN and Brian Robinson, not Bijan Robinson, Brian Robinson there. So what are we thinking about this?
I mean, that definitely cleared up a lot. Look, we all know Jaylen Waddle, that's my guy. I'm leaning Jaylen Waddle side, especially now that I know that that's not Bijan.
Yeah.
I was starting to be like, okay, man, I know Waddle's my boy, but yeah, I'm definitely leading the A side of the trade. Jaylen Waddle, he's dynamic. Tyreek Hill, sooner or later is going to hang it up, especially if he goes by his own timeline that he told us that he's going to retire. Like JSN a lot, man. Don't really think too much of Brian Robinson. He's like a flex running back to me. JSN is the one with all the upside. If you think that JSN has the upside to actually reach Waddle, which I just don't think that. Yeah, this is kind of, the more I think about it, this is kind of a landslide for the A side for me, at least.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, this is a trade where you do have to have conviction in Jaxon, Smith-Njigba. And in all honesty, like I made a trade similar to this in a league that we play in earlier this offseason. There was a guy, it's Brandon. Brandon really believes in Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, and he gave me Jaylen Waddle for JSN straight up 1-for-1. And so that one is one that I'm very happy that I was able to get that type of trade done. Obviously, this one is a similar type of deal. I mean, you throw Brian Robinson in there. Like you said, he's kind of a flex guy, low end running back too, depending on how you view it. But I think the addition of Jayden Daniels, some people are going to say that the rushing upside that Jayden Daniels has is going to help Brian Robinson. I don't think it is. I think there's going to be probably less check down opportunity. You also add the addition of Austin Eckler, and it just feels to me like we probably aren't going to have a great Brian Robinson, or at least a reliable Brian Robinson. And I'm getting more and more nervous. I still like Jaxon, Smith-Njigba, and I still see a pathway for him to break out, but I'm getting a little bit more nervous with him. And it feels weird to say it because it is only going into year 2. But to me, it feels like if JSN doesn't do it this year, like if he doesn't break out and give us like top 24 numbers, I think as a sophomore, we're going to be pretty much out on him at that point. Like, I don't think a lot of people are really going to be excited about what JSN has to offer if he doesn't give us top 24 numbers in this Brian Grubb or this Ryan Grubb offense here in Seattle. So for me, I'm going to take the Jaylen Waddle side. I think if you believe in JSN, the value department, I bet if you put it in like keep trade cut or you put it in something else, I bet it probably checks out as fair. But I definitely would prefer the Waddle side if I'm the one taking that side of the deal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you on JSN. We have to see something this upcoming season. We can't. I mean, Shane Waldron's gone now. He blames Shane Waldron for his season last season. He's gone now. We got to see something from JSN. I'm in a league where it's hard for me to even move JSN because nobody values him. And it's crazy because I have Brandon in that league too. So I'm just not able to move JSN because people are down, and we got to see something, man. I still believe in him. It's just time for him to produce.
Yeah, man. I saw something the other day on Twitter, and it was basically like the last 4 years for Jaxon, Smith-Njigba and what he did like production wise. And it looks very red flaggish, and I don't really want to like sit here and, because like I said, I like JSN. It's just, I'm telling you what I'm seeing right now. And 2020, JSN had 7 games played. He had 10 receptions for 49 receiving yards in 2020. Then obviously that was the Ohio State team that had like Marvin Harrison, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, like a bunch of other superstars. Now 2021, he broke out 95 receptions, 1,600 yards, 9 touchdowns. That was the year that everyone was like, oh shit, JSN might actually be like one of the best, if not the best guy in this offense behind Marvin Harrison Jr. or behind Garrett Wilson. And then 2022, plays in 3 games, gets 5 receptions for 43 yards. Then he goes to the pros, and in the pros, you know the story. It was 17 games played, 63 receptions, 600 yards, 4 touchdowns, 56th in fantasy points per game. So it's like one of these last 4 seasons, 3 years in college and 1 year in the pros, only one of those years has JSN ever went for more than 1,000 yards and actually been like a big contributor on his fantasy or on his football team. And so it makes you a little bit nervous, I think, if you have him in fantasy. And again, I believe in JSN. I'm willing to hold JSN. I have shares of JSN where I am going to see what happens in year 2, but I'm nervous about it because I think that there is enough red flags or yellow flags or whatever you want to call them where you could say maybe you do want to just try and move out of JSN right now because his value is still pretty high for the most part. I mean, I want to see where he's at on KTC. He's not as high as he used to be. He used to be a guy that we all valued as like a top 12, top 15 guy. But right now, he's in a tier. He's wide receiver 25. I mean, we're talking about like DJ Moore or JSN. Like, if DJ Moore is not going to fail this year, I don't think anybody expects him to fail this year. Like, he should be the number 1 for the Bears. Mm-hmm. If you can move JSN for DJ Moore and you're nervous, maybe it's worth it. Same thing with like guys like Michael Pittman Jr. or even if you could move JSN for DK Metcalf, who's the number 1 guy on his own team, like, would you do that? I don't know. I think there's a big enough conversation, but this trade considered, JSN feels risky. Brian Robinson is not enough of a significant piece for me to move off of my Jaylen Waddle because I do believe that Jaylen Waddle is a top 12, 15-ish wide receiver and will continue to be a top 12, 15-ish wide receiver for a pretty significant amount of time. So
I agree.
All right, man. Well, let's move on to this next trade here. We have trade number 2. This is a 12-team league, super flex, full PPR, and start 10. And we got the little scribbles. You know, I like to joke about the scribbles, but they want to hide the names, and that's fine. But we got team 1, Garrett Wilson. Team 2, Jonathon Brooks and Jordan Addison. So this is the deal. 12-team Superflex, full PPR. How are we feeling about this type of offer?
Well, I'm leaning the A side on this trade. Team 1, Garrett Wilson. I just feel like there's too much upside there. There's too much opportunity. I just feel like he is the better prospect. Like, I understand right now, and I think we spoke about this before. Right now, Jonathon Brooks is hot in the Dynasty community. Mm-hmm. And the way I personally look at it, I just value wide receivers, elite wide receivers, a lot more than potential elite running back. And I say potential because Jonathon Brooks has not played 1 snap in the NFL yet. So I'm not going to value him like he's a guy who already played a season and showed like a bunch of production. And then Jordan Addison, a lot of his production came without JJ. So he kind of went back. I don't want to say he went back to being like a pumpkin once JJ came back, but we didn't see the same guy. You know, we could look at him and say, okay, Hawk isn't going to be there when season kicks off. Maybe we're going to get some production there from Addison. But all in all, I'm going to lean towards the wide receiver with the bigger ceiling, with the production already demonstrated. I'm going to go with the A side.
I hear you. And I do actually think I lean that way too. Although I don't think that this package of compensation is actually that bad. Getting a young running back like Jonathon Brooks, who is being valued highly in the community. Even if you don't believe in Jonathon Brooks, you can move him for somebody you do believe in. Jordan Addison, I think he's fine. Like, I really don't think there's been a lot of negative people about Jordan Addison this offseason, and I don't really know why, because I feel like if you look at like all of the rookie wide receiver seasons from last year, Jordan Addison is probably towards the top of all of the guys producing last year. Obviously not named Puka Nacua because he just blew the league out the water. But you get Jordan Addison, you get Jonathon Brooks. I think these guys are fine. Garrett Wilson, obviously he is the superstar, that cornerstone type of player that you want. At least that's what we're projecting now with Aaron Rodgers under center. Some people are going to say that it hasn't happened yet, and we're going into year 3 with Garrett Wilson, and they're like, well, we need to see it happen. And so we'll see what happens. But I really do think that this trade is probably fair for both parties. I just, without the context of what team 2 is doing here, I don't really understand it, because I would think maybe they're like strong at wide receiver and they needed some running back back depth or they needed a running back, and so they down tiered, but we don't have that context. Also, I can't really assume that they're a rebuilding roster, because if you are, Garrett Wilson's a great rebuilding piece and you're just moving a bunch of young pieces around. So probably lack a little bit of context about the teams, but all around, I think it's a fine trade probably for both parties, but definitely give me the Garrett Wilson side because I think he's the highest ceiling player in this trade, and I think he's the player that I believe in the most.
Yeah. Let me ask you something. Do you feel like the market on Garrett Wilson is cooling off a little bit?
I think it is.
Because I swear, a season ago, if we're talking last offseason, this trade would have been laughable if somebody came with an offer, top rated rookie running back, and then Jordan Addison for Garrett Wilson. Like, I've seen Garrett Wilson move for a lot more than this a season ago. So it seems like the community is starting to get a little bit down on Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I think it is too. And I think it is kind of that thing that we talked about with JSN, where it's like, you have 2 years of production or 3 years. And I hope I'm not mistaking how long Garrett Wilson has been in the league, because maybe it's longer, but I think we're going into year 3, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, we are going into year 3.
Yeah.
So you get those 2 years of production. I mean, 12.7 fantasy points per game with Zach Wilson under center, 30th in the league, fantasy points per game. Last year, you have, same old bad quarterback play, 12.5, 32. So like, what the card that he has been dealt, for the most part, he has performed above expectations, I think. Now, obviously, we all expect Garrett Wilson to be an elite guy, so he's not performing it that way. So it's weird, man, because it's like you can point to a few things and kind of make the excuses for Garrett Wilson to be like, well, we know he's not producing because of this, and we know that he's not getting the receiving numbers because of that. And so you can make the excuses for him. I think when I compare him to JSN, the difference is that, like, year 1, Garrett Wilson made sure he was the number 1 guy on the field. JSN wasn't the number 1 player on his field. You know what I mean? So I think that's the difference. But Garrett Wilson, it seems like the market's cooling. I agree with you, though, because I remember I had some Garrett Wilson shares, and it was like, well, if I'm not getting Amon-Ra, or I'm not getting a guy that I believe is an elite talent, then I don't want to trade Garrett Wilson, because I don't think that anybody else below him, and this was last year's time, so obviously things have changed a little bit, but I mean, just thinking of the guys that are below him right now, Neighbors, Olave, Drake London, I still like Garrett Wilson over them all.
Yeah, man. I just think people are tripping, bro. I'm not even for the cap. I think people are tripping. I think, honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with the quarterback position. I think a lot of it has to do with that, because when we were going into a season thinking, oh man, we're getting Aaron Rodgers, he's Aaron Rodgers. He's going to put up numbers. Oh, and imagine how Garrett Wilson's going to do with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers get hurt, and now we are looking like, man, is this guy going to get hurt again? Does this guy want to be a politician? Does this guy want to bury himself in leaves and smoke ayahuasca or whatever you do with it? Like, what is he like? What do he want to do? Is he going to be productive, or is he going to start looking like a quarterback of his age and start looking like an aging quarterback that needs to hang it up? And how is that going to affect Garrett Wilson? And I think that's what the situation is. We're talking about a situation where Garrett Wilson was going into a season where we knew his quarterback was going to be pretty good. This wouldn't even be a discussion. I don't think anybody doubts the talent and skills of Garrett Wilson. It's how can this offense maximize Garrett Wilson, and how could that turn into fantasy production?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's going to be that conversation too that, we're going to have to inevitably have, where a year from now, like, yeah, he got a year of Aaron Rodgers, but now Aaron Rodgers is old, and he's maybe thinking about retirement. And now what happens with Garrett Wilson? Also, he's due for a contract extension. Do the Jets pay him big money? Does he get to go on and test the open market? Is there a trade? Like, there's a whole bunch of uncertainty, I think, in the future for Garrett Wilson. And so I don't know, man. Would you, if you could possibly get a boom year out of Garrett Wilson, where he kind of goes crazy with Aaron Rodgers, because we saw glimpses of it. I know it was Hard Knocks, and they wanted us to see what they wanted to see, but it seemed like Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers had a good rapport. Aaron Rodgers was talking about Garrett Wilson reminded him of Devontae Adams. And then you saw in the preseason games, like, he was kind of feeding Garrett Wilson. There was that highlight touchdown and things like that, where, like, people were getting excited. If you get a good year of Garrett Wilson and you can move him for an Amon-Ra, maybe a Marvin, maybe a Jamar, somebody like that. Like, are you getting out of Garrett Wilson after this boom year?
Yes, especially if it's any of those guys you named, because all of those guys are young and I already have them above Garrett Wilson. And I'm going to look at the quarterback position, and I'm sorry, Jets fans, there's no historical, and I'm speaking as a Bears fan, so feel free to attack me and say, how dare you got nerve. But there's no historical data proving that the New York Jets have the ability to draft or sign a quarterback that's going to be productive? Like, are they going to get Dak? Like, what are they going to do? So, I would definitely move Garrett Wilson if he has a boom season for one of those guys you named.
Yeah, maybe even if it's just in season, like if Amon-Ra, God forbid Amon-Ra gets hurt or something and he's missing games and Garrett Wilson's going crazy, make that swap in season. You may lose a couple games because you lose Garrett Wilson, but I think long term that's the move to make. But let's move on to this next trade here. We have trade number 3. Speaking of the Bears, we got DeAndre Swift and a 25-second for Nico Collins. This is a super flex and start 9. The context that we got was he was running back heavy. I think RJ Drum, he was running back heavy and he needed wide receiver depth, so he trades DeAndre Swift in a second for Nico Collins.
I mean, did this trade get approved? Like, that's what I want to know, because
that's what I'm saying, because it says pending and it doesn't say accepted. And to me, it's like, well, of course I want the Nico Collins side. This isn't even a question to me.
Yeah. I want the Nico Collins side. I mean, we've talked about the valuation of running backs and versus wide receivers. I'm going to go with the young wide receiver who's been very productive over the running back who's been productive but also has been unhealthy. Second round pick, that's cool, but I don't think that matches up to Nico Collins. Even if you are running back heavy, why would the other team do that? That's like,
I'm not sure. I mean, there's probably a reason why he blurred out the name, because he knew what we were about to say. But the reality is, like, you're talking about Nico Collins. This is a guy who now is being valued in the same breath as like guys like Brandon Ayuk, Rome Odunze, Devontae Smith. Like, this is the type of tier that Nico Collins is in, and I think rightfully so. He's got the contract, he has the production, he has the quarterback, he has everything that you want right now. And not only that, bonus points for me, he grades out really, really well in Matt Harmon's reception perception, which to me means great things. So love to see all of that from Nico Collins. Swift, fine. I've talked about him potentially even being undervalued in the community right now, but not for Nico Collins. A Swift in a second for Nico Collins, that's not what I want to do. I mean, if you're RJ Drum, I'll give you the stamp of a thumbs up. Good job for you. But your league mate, I don't know what he's doing. I don't know how he let you get away with this, because this is a runaway for the Nico side.
Agreed.
All right, we don't got to talk about that much longer. Let's move to the next one. We got this one. If I remember the context correctly, he says neither of these trades are his, but it happened in his league and he thought it was a good trade to talk about. So we'll talk about it. 12 teams, super flex, full PPR. It is a full point tight end premium. So 2 point per reception for the tight end, and it's start 10. Billy the Squid, he's going to get Jared Goff, DJ Moore, and a 25 first. That first is coming from a team that is not in this trade. And then GB forever, he's getting CJ Stroud. So how are we feeling about a 12-team Superflex league where CJ Stroud is being acquired for Jared Goff, DJ Moore, and a first?
Okay, I'm not going to jump all over this trade. I mean, the CJ Stroud side wins to me. I'm trying to just kind of look at the pieces and see how they fit in. Okay, Jared Goff, CJ Stroud. Jared Goff, DJ Moore, CJ Stroud. Still going CJ Stroud. I'm looking at the first and I'm wondering, like, is this first from a team that's contending? Is this first from, if it's from a team that's contending, then I'm heavy on the CJ Stroud side. If it's from a team that's rebuilding, I'm still the CJ Stroud side, but I'm not disgusted. So, I mean, that's kind of just how I'm looking at it. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we talk about that 2025 draft class, and specifically right now, the way that it looks today is it is a class that is strong at running back. There's a couple good wide receivers at the top, Luther Burton, T-Mac, and then we got a lot of question marks at the quarterback position. So in our super flex leagues, which this one is, there's going to be a lot of, we don't know how good this class is, because we know that the strengths of the classes in super flex leagues rely on the quarterback position. So next year we're talking like, is Shadur Sanders QB1? Is it Carson Beck? Is it like, there's a lot of uncertainty. So it feels very, you remember that quarterback class in 2022 when we had Kenny Pickett, Sam Howell, Malik Willis? Like, that's kind of the quarterback class that it feels like we're about to get, and it sucks. So maybe somebody comes out and surprises. But the point of me bringing that up is because it feels like that 25 first isn't as valuable as other years 25 first right now, because you're either drafting a running back who has a shorter shelf life, or you're getting one of those guys at the wide receiver position that probably are going to go very early, or you're taking a shot on one of these QBs. And I don't like the idea of that. Jared Goff, he's fine. Points per game wise, actually, him and CJ Stroud probably were pretty close last year from a points per game standpoint. We expect Stroud to take a step forward with Stephon Diggs in a second year in the offense. You get DJ Moore. If you're running for a championship and you're Billy the Squid, I could see where you're like, maybe this buys me similar points per game at the QB position, and then I get an extra wide receiver, but you're thinking really short term there. All in all, I mean, the reason why I say all of that is like, I was just trying to find the reasoning for Billy the Squid, but from a value standpoint, from building a roster standpoint, in a 12-team super flex where having those elite quarterbacks is game changing for your rosters, CJ Stroud, if there's going to be a player that can step into the next tier, and I'm talking about that tier where we have had Josh Allen and Mahomes and even Jalen Hurts was there. I still think he's there. Some people say he's not there, but like the points per games that those guys give us, if Stroud makes the jump, that's the tier that we're talking about him getting into, and those guys are damn near unmovable on your rosters. So I'm not selling Stroud yet. I get that his value could be at a high right now if he doesn't take the step forward, but I think at worst, if he doesn't take a step forward and he goes out and gives you the same production next year, we're probably still valuing him the same way that we value Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert and some of these guys. So I don't think that there's much to lose with a guy like CJ Stroud. So just give me CJ Stroud on this side of the deal.
Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, guys like CJ Stroud or at least who we expect CJ Stroud to be, those guys they don't come around too often. So when you got them, you definitely don't try to move them. And if you have an opportunity to get them, you go get them.
Yeah. And I mean, just another way to say this too is like, you can find another Jared Goff. You can find another DJ Moore. It's hard to find another CJ Stroud, at least what we project him to be. So that's the way that I view it. But we'll move on to trade number 5. This one was submitted by Anon. It is a 10-team super flex, full PPR, and a start 9. Anon says he is contending, so he trades Gardner Minshew, Juwan Johnson in a third, and he gets Matthew Stafford.
I like that trade for Anon. I mean, you're contending. Obviously, he wanted Stafford because he feels like it'll boost. He's probably needs somebody a little bit better in that super flex position, and I feel like that wasn't too much to give up to get Matthew Stafford. Actually, it wasn't a lot because I still think there's a chance that Minshew isn't even named the starter for the Raiders. I think there's a chance that Aiden O'Connell is the starter for the Raiders, and then that makes this trade even easier. So I really like Anon's side on this one.
Yeah, this one isn't particularly close to me. Like, I just want the Matthew Stafford side, and a guy like Minshew, who everybody, loves the fun side of what Gardner Minshew is and the funny photos and all the other stuff that he does. Whatever. Like, this is a 10-team league. Gardner Minshew is at best on a 10-team roster. If you're playing him as your QB2, you're in bad shape. If you're playing him as your QB3, all right, fine. But Matthew Stafford is a bona fide QB2, maybe even has the upside of a QB1 some weeks with Puka and Cooper Kupp and some of these guys in this offense, Kyron Williams. So it's just not close. I think Juwan Johnson, probably sneaky, dealing with the foot injury, 25 third, really don't give a shit, especially because Anon says he's a contender, so that's a late third. Don't care. Yeah, like just give me the Stafford side, and I think if you even wanted to like make this somewhat even close, like it probably has to be like Gardner Minshew a second and Juwan Johnson, or Gardner Minshew in a second and a third. Like there has to be a second thrown in here for it to even be somewhat close, and even if it's Minshew in a second, I still want the Stafford side.
Yeah, this was pretty easy.
Yeah, that's so for Anon, I mean, he accomplished what he wanted. He's contending. He gets Matthew Stafford. That's a steal, though. Not sure what Trader Joe's doing. Let's move on to the next one. We have No Quarters and Dano, and I'm putting some faith here. No Quarters submitted this. He cropped it by himself, and I think he cropped out the trade accepted. But in the future, we need to see the trade completed because I need to know that this isn't just an offer. I need to know that this actually went through, but I'm trusting him on this one. 12-team super flex, full PPR, and start 10. Quarters says he is a contending roster. So this one is a very interesting trade because we have Amon-Ra St. Brown and a 26 second being traded for Tyreek Hill, Rashee Rice, and a 26 first. So how do we feel about this type of deal, knowing that Quarters is a contending roster?
So here is how I'm looking at it. If you're bringing in Tyreek Hill, you're almost guaranteed to have possibly the highest scoring player in fantasy football this season,
Period.
barring something going crazy. Okay,
Yep.
so that already gives him a foot. He's only losing to Amon-Ra in the sense that he's going to be retired before Amon-Ra. But I think we could have both agreed that production-wise, he's probably going to outproduce Amon-Ra, right?
I have Tyreek higher than Amon-Ra in my redraft rankings this year.
Yeah. So I think we could be clear on that one. Okay, so no quarters is getting the upgrade there. So then we're looking at, or even if you want to just say, because I know you like to do this, if we want to be generous, we could say that Amon-Ra and Tyreek cancel each other out. The production that you're going to get from Tyreek Hill, we could put that towards the years you're going to be having Amon-Ra on your roster. Yeah. So now we're looking at a 26 second for Rashee Rice and the 26 first. And
I mean, I think that's very generous for you to wipe Amon-Ra and Tyreek together. But like, even if you wanted to say like a 26 first and Tyreek gets you Amon-Ra, then you're looking at Rashee for a 26 second. Like, I feel like that's the way that I would look at it.
Yeah.
Kind of looking at this trade, I will say right now, I like it for both sides, and I'm going to kind of bring up talking points for both sides because I think this trade is fair.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense for both sides, but from a win now perspective, which Quarters is saying that he is a contending roster and he's trying to win now. From a win now perspective, I think the Tyreek, the Rashee Rice, and the first side is the side that I prefer in that window. And I know Amon-Ra, he is a superstar. Love Amon-Ra. He is a cornerstone wide receiver, like an elite guy. And this honestly is it's a very fair price to pay to get a guy like Amon-Ra. Like, this is a good trade for Quarters still. But if I'm trying to win now, I feel like Tyreek and Rashee and having that first gives me more flexibility to win in 2024, where you can win. We're assuming this is a paid league, but then you say you win the championship, you win, let's say it's a $100 league. You win like $800 in your 12-team league. Now you have 7 years of buy-ins or 8 years of buy-ins that you can pay forward to that league with those winnings, and now you can rebuild for 2 years or 3 years. So like, because you had a guy like Tyreek Hill. So long term, I don't necessarily feel like this is a bad move. I mean, you still get an elite guy who's going to be good for a long time, but Rashee and a first, it just feels like I'd rather have the Tyreek in the right side. But I could make an argument for either side. I like Dano's side and I like No Quarter side. If Dano is contending, this is a good deal for him. If he's not contending, this doesn't make sense, but I can't imagine you're trading for Tyreek if you're not contending.
Yeah. That's where I'm at with it pretty much. It's not a bad trade in any way, shape, or form.
I think it's fair. This is just a good, fair trade. You could make an argument either way.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
So I like it. But if I got to win now, give me the guy who I have hired this year, and that's Tyreek. But let's go to this next trade here. We have Manning03 and Mick Roethlisberger. It is a 12-team super flex, 6-point passing touchdown. He says he had Kyler, Lamar, Jayden Daniels, and Brock Purdy in his quarterback room. So 4 starting quarterbacks. He had to move one of these quarterbacks to get some extra depth. So he trades away Kyler Murray. He gets Michael Penix, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, Najee Harris, and a 27 second. How do you feel about this type of move?
I like the Kyler Murray side. And it's because really, if you look at the totality of everything he gave up for Kyler Murray, I feel like he gave up a bag of question mark for a player that's going to be dynamic, we know, going into this year. Najee Harris, question mark. Like, who's going to be the guy between him and Jaylen Warren? JSN, question mark. We just highlighted all the reasons why we have a little bit of concern for JSN. Michael Penix, big question mark. You got drafted. You're behind Kirk Cousins. You weren't really high on too many people's board outside of the Falcon. And then we got a 27 second, that's 3 years away. But in return, you're getting Kyler Murray, a player that we know is going to put up QB1 numbers. We know he still has upside. He's still young, ladies and gentlemen. Let's stop acting like Kyler Murray is like this old prospect. Like, he's still young. So I definitely lean the B side in this trade.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, Kyler Murray's a guy that I feel like has consistently been undervalued. I still think he's undervalued. Like, this is a guy who I would, whether people agree with it or not, like, I value Kyler Murray, and this is going to be hot takey. I know some people are going to be mad in the comments, but I think that Kyler Murray is, and let me say this with my chest. I think Kyler Murray is in the same tier as Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. Like, I think he's that type of talent when he's on the football field. And yes, he's been injured and people don't like Kyler Murray because of the Call of Duty stuff and some of the other crap that he gets in the media at times, and he's short and people, whatever. When he's on the football field, he's dominant. Like, actually dominant. He puts up the same type of production as Pat Mahomes and the same type of production as Jalen Hurts and the same type of production as Lamar Jackson. Like, he is elite when he is on the football field. And oh, by the way, we just gave him Marvin Harrison Jr. So yeah, that probably helps him a little bit too. I like Kyler Murray. I just think, for me, I understand that you did your draft and you have Kyler, you have Lamar, you have Jayden Daniels, you have Brock Purdy. So now you have an influx of QB talent and you feel like I should move one of these guys. When I look at the list, and maybe you tried this, and I'm just speaking to the choir at this point. Kyler is not the first guy that I'm looking to sell. Purdy is probably the first one that I'm looking to sell, because I think if you can sell Purdy for a JSN or Purdy for a JSN and a Penix, I'm fine with that. I don't need the Najee Harris in the 27th second. If I can move Jayden Daniels and keep Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray, I'd rather move Jayden Daniels and sell off the hype of Jayden Daniels and still get probably similar value to what you're getting in a Kyler Murray trade, because some people value Kyler Murray and Jayden Daniels almost identical right now. And so those would probably be the moves that I would make. From a value standpoint, I see the process. I like, it's underrated, I think, that you got Michael Penix thrown into there, because you can put him on a taxi squad for 2 years and have a starting quarterback later down the road. I like that. We always talk about war. When you trade a quarterback, you should be receiving one back at least. And so that's sneaky. That 27 second, that just feels really unnecessary to be thrown in. Like, 3 years out in the second round. First of all, why is your league even allowing you to trade that if you haven't paid for that year yet? And then second of all, like, what is enticing about a 27 second, bro? Like, these guys, those 27 prospects, like, some of those guys aren't even in college yet that we're talking about, like, or they're freshmen this year or some. Like, it's bad, whatever. Like you said, Najee, JSN, they're question marks. I see the vision. I see that you had a problem that you felt like you had to address. This gets into something that we talked about a long time ago. I think this was what, 3 trade shows or 2 trade shows ago, where I said we don't have to set our lineup in the summer.
Right.
Kyler can sit on your bench for 2 more months or 3 more months. And in this space, he's not actually going to be on your bench, because eventually he probably is your second most talented quarterback on this roster. But you don't have to set the lineup. Be patient. Let the guys come to you. Let the right deal come to you. You don't have to accept the first thing. This one feels like you just got out a little bit light. So from a winner and loser standpoint, I see the process of Manning, but I want the value of that elite QB at a discount being received by Mick Roethlisberger.
Yeah, man, this one's pretty easy when you really break it down. It's just like I said, Kyler Murray, so many people disrespect him. So many people and I don't know if it's because I'm sympathizing with Kyler, because I see a lot of I feel like how he's been looked at now is the future of how Caleb Williams is going to be looked at. But guys, let's take our personal feelings about all the Call of Duty, all the other BS, and let's just look strictly at fantasy football production, people. This guy produces like one of the top guys. Andrew is right putting him in a tier with those other guys, because that's what his production suggests he should be put. Simple as that. And I'm not going to there's people trading Najee last season for a bag of beans. I think I might have been one of the people that traded Najee for a bag of beans. JSN, everybody's not trading Jaylen Waddle for JSN. That was a no-brainer, except for Andrew. Okay, you're not getting a ton of stuff for JSN on June 30th, 2024. You're not getting a ton for JSN. Michael Penix, I don't know what he's worth, because we don't know what he's going to do. We don't know when he's going to get to play. So, and again, Andrew, like Andrew said, 27 draft pick. Are you kidding me? These dudes are still trying to figure out how to pass algebra. So, like, in high school. So let's just get a good sense here of what you're doing, man. Kyler Murray is still a stud, bro.
Yeah, I just wanted to pull this stat up too. Most fantasy points per game all time from quarterback. This is the list. Patrick Mahomes, number 1. Josh Allen, number 2. Deshaun Watson, number 3. Kyler Murray, number 4. Andrew Luck, number 5. Kyler Murray is the 4th. He has the 4th most points per game all time from quarterbacks in fantasy football. And we're talking about this guy as if he's mid or a second round pick, blah, 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 blah. He's right there. He is 1 point per game. 2 points per game behind Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes all time. And we're talking about those guys as the 101 and the 102 in fantasy football draft. Kyler Murray is elite when he's on the field. And I know that I have to keep saying on the field because he does deal with some injuries, but that should tell you how elite this guy is in your lineup. And I don't understand it. It seems like people, it does feel like early this offseason, I was really hammering that Kyler Murray is a value. And then the market has kind of corrected where a lot of people are like, oh yeah, Kyler Murray is a value, but nobody's still drafting him higher. They're just saying he's a value, but they're letting him fall in the second round, which is fine. That's fine. But look, man, we got to adjust this because Kyler Murray is elite, man. So anyways,
I feel like Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow are becoming the new Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, Justin Herbert will definitely, if Harbaugh and them want to run the football, people are going to start talking about, well, Justin Herbert is super elite, but he has this and this and this going on that makes us not want him. And it's definitely going to be a situation like that, but we'll see what happens. All in all, give me the Kyler side. There's not enough value coming back over on this side. I see what you were trying to do. I don't love the execution, and I don't love the player in that quarterback room that you decided to trade away. I think Daniels and Purdy would have been better choices to try and trade away.
Yeah.
So let's move on to trade 8. We got a Goat Rings trade. It's been a while. He messaged me. He said we haven't had a Goat Rings trade in a while. So here we go. He started submitting some more, and now we are JJ McCarthy, Brian Thomas, and a 25 first for Jayden Daniels, Xavier Legette, and Jermaine Burton. This is a 10-team league, Superflex, PPR, 0.75 tight end premium, and it's start 11. Now, he wanted to let us know that he has Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, and Michael Penix at the quarterback position. So he's starting Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. He traded away Jayden Daniels for what he thought was a upgrade at the wide receiver position, going from Legette to Brian Thomas. He gets a 25 first thrown in, and then he gets JJ McCarthy as the downgrade at the QB. So how do we feel about this type of trade?
I like this trade for Goat Rings, man, because the way I feel like he's cashed in that Jayden Daniels ticket. I think there's two schools of people. It's the people who think that Jayden Daniels is overhyped and, is not going to amount to too much, which I'm kind of in the middle. I'm going to cop out. I'm kind of in the middle. Then you got the other group that think he's going to be like Jalen Hurts or be like one of those guys that put up big numbers. And I think what he got back was appropriate. He got a first. He got Brian Thomas. He got JJ McCarthy. So he got another rookie who is not out of the realm of outcomes that we see a situation where JJ McCarthy outproduces Jayden Daniels. So you're getting another guy you're bringing in that could potentially be better than the main piece that this other player was trying to get. So I lean the A side on this one. I don't think too much of Xavier Legette. I mean, you're part of the reason for that. I'm not gonna lie. And because you kind of put some data out there I had to look at. But
yeah.
And Burton is a nice prospect, but I feel like if you're matching up Burton with a 25 first, I'm going with the 25 first. So I'm on the A side on this one.
Yep, I agree, man. I think Goat Ring side is the side that I prefer. And with that being said, Daniels is the best, quote unquote, best player in the deal, the most valuable player in the deal. But there is enough value back on that Goat Ring side that makes this worth it for me. Because like I said, and like you said, actually, you get Jayden Daniels. This is a guy that in drafts we were taking him, 103, 104. And then you get JJ McCarthy, where in drafts we were taking him, 106, 107?
Yeah, around
so
there.
You move back a couple spots. I guess at worst in some leagues, maybe you were getting McCarthy at 108. But you move back a couple spots at the QB position. You still get a guy that, again, can be talented, can be successful at the NFL level. You get the upgrade from Brian Thomas to Legette, where Brian Thomas was a first-round selection in most leagues. Legette was not. So you're getting a first-round upgrade there. And then you get that 25 first, and Jermaine Burton, you're getting that first-round upgrade there. So it does feel like enough value, and I'm okay with a deal like this where you have Josh Allen, you have Jalen Hurts as your two QBs above him. So between Justin Fields, JJ McCarthy, and Michael Penix, you have three guys now that, one of them has to become your QB3 in this 10-man league, and then you rely on Hurts and Allen. So long-term, love this trade. I think Scooby probably has an argument that he's getting the most fantasy or the most talented player for fantasy with the rushing upside and things like that. Like, that makes sense too, I guess. But the way that Goat Rings gave us the context, the way that he wrote it out for the trade that he made for his team, I like this trade for Goat Rings.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I would like to know the state of Scooby's roster, if he's rebuilding or not. I'm going to make an assumption with no basis that he's probably rebuilding. And if he is, man, still giving up. It's hard to tell that because he gave up a lot of young assets too. So
also, something that I just noticed that I didn't mention is you see that 25 first, there's no name underneath that, which means that Goat Rings is getting his 25 first round pick back from Scooby. So now he controls his own destiny. So if his team's bad, he has his first round pick back in 2025. So that makes me almost lean that way even more.
Yeah, that is a good point.
So interesting. But yeah, give me the McCarthy side with this context with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts on your starting lineup. We'll move on over here. We have trade number 9. This is a 12-team super flex, half PPR, and start 10. He wanted us to know that the 25 picks in this are all supposed to be late. So That's the way we usually just project them anyways, as late picks. But you got T. Higgins, Brian Thomas, who was drafted at 112, and a 25 second being traded for Waddle, Hopkins, and a 25 third. So how do we feel about this deal?
There's a lot of moving parts in this one.
There is.
Man. Believe it or not, man, I'm gonna lean the T. Higgins side.
Okay, that's where I was going.
And it's hard because I love T. Higgins and I love Waddle. So it's difficult, but I feel like you're not getting I'm looking at what the B side got is just like really I'm just looking at Waddle. Don't care about the third, Hopkins, whatever. But then at the other side, we're looking at T. Higgins, Brian Thomas, who's gonna be their eventual wide receiver one. Yeah, receiver one. And then you're getting the second too. So I like the A side on this one for sure.
Yeah, I do too. And I think you are getting that probably down tier. You go, down a tier from Jaylen Waddle to T. Higgins. There's potentially a long-term play here too, because T. Higgins, he's on that 1-year deal with Cincinnati. Next year, do they finally let him kind of test the market and become a number 1 wide receiver somewhere else? If he does, you get a value increase for T. Higgins. Brian Thomas, obviously first-round type of talent. What does he do in Jacksonville? He doesn't have the most clean profile, but the talent is still there. All-time touchdown record holder at LSU, breaking Jamar Chase's touchdown record. Like, there's a lot of value on that Higgins and BTJ side. I don't mind it. And in a super flex half PPR, half point per reception, Jaylen Waddle probably loses a tiny bit of value because he is a little bit more of a PPR focused guy, where T. Higgins and BTJ, they're big play touchdown upside type of wide receivers. Give me that T. Higgins and BTJ side.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like you're potentially getting 2 possible wide receiver ones on your side, depending on what happens with T. Higgins in free agency, depending on how Brian Thomas translates to the NFL. I think, yeah, man, as cool as great as Jayden Waddle is, I think the value going to the other side is a little bit more.
Yeah, and I just want to confirm that because I'm going to pull up the wide receiver ranks right here on KTC. Jaylen Waddle, currently the wide receiver 13. T. Higgins is the wide receiver 24. But the value in between those guys is not that much. It's like less than 1,000 points in value. So they got guys like Tank Dell and George Pickens over T. Higgins, which I just don't necessarily agree with. Got Zay Flowers over T. Higgins. Don't necessarily agree with it. It's fine. People are lower on T. Higgins right now for whatever reason. I guess last year was kind of a down year, injury year. Then he had the drama in the offseason. Yeah, man. I mean, just give me the Higgins side. I don't think there's too much more to it. I don't hate the Waddle side. I mean, you get the best player in the deal in Jaylen Waddle, and DeAndre Hopkins. He's probably sneaky on a contending roster, can still give you some upside. 25 third, especially being projected late. Don't care. But give me the T. Higgins side there.
Yeah, man, we on the same page on that one.
All right, last trade here. We got Anthony Mack and J.S. Adams 62. It is a 12-team super flex, full PPR, half point tight end premium, and start 10. This is a big one. We got Nico Collins, Rhamondre Stevenson, and a 25 first being traded for Malik Neighbors, Jalen Wright, and Luke McCaffrey. So how are we feeling about this one, War?
I wonder if this is where we finally have a one that we don't agree with, because we've agreed on all of them so far in this one. I'm going with the B side, man. I just like the idea of getting. Wait, hold on. Let me take that back. I just realized something. I got somebody shoot. Okay, no, I'm going with the A side. I switched it up. I'm sorry, guys. I switched it up. I don't know why I got Luke McCaffrey mixed up with freaking
Lad McConkey.
Yeah. Okay, so guys, if it was Lad McConkey, I was going with the B side, but since it's not, I'm going with the A side. I just like the prospect of getting Nico Collins and that first, which we're going to project to be late. That first. And Rhamondre Stevenson, I mean, that's cool. I mean, I don't trust New England running backs, but, it's whatever. It's cool. I feel like Luke McCaffrey and Wright aren't big enough prospects to make me feel like they're huge factors in this deal. So I'm strictly looking at Malik Neighbors. And we're saying like what? Malik Neighbors is what? Like probably the 3rd pick in the first round in fantasy drafts, dynasty drafts.
Yeah, he was in 103 consideration, 104. It was like Daniels and Neighbors that were right there.
Yeah, so if I'm looking at it in that context, you're getting Nico, you're getting a 25 first and Rhamondre Stevenson for 103, 104. Yeah, I like that. So I'm going to go with the A side, man.
Yeah, this is interesting because Anthony actually DM'd me in the Discord when he was offered this, and we kind of talked about my thoughts and my feelings on this one. So it's funny to actually see this now being submitted as as it's been completed because we talked about it beforehand. And I told him in the Discord, I was like, well, this is an interesting trade because for the most part, and actually in the Discord, he didn't let me know which side he was receiving. He only gave me the trade as is, and then I just gave like blank analysis. Now, I told him that I think the side that I lean to is probably the Malik Neighbors side. And I said that at the time. Looking at this now, I think Stevenson has since got that contract extension, that 2025 first, knowing that it, top flight, it's not a guy in this deal, whatever. Like, not that that matters too much. And then Nico Collins just getting a little bit more comfortable with Nico as the number one in Houston. I think I do lean that side. I'm in the same breath as you. And actually, when I said that to him in the Discord, I told him that I think the top side probably just had more value anyways, even though I thought I preferred Neighbors, because I think there's more value up there. Looking at Jaylen Wright, I do think he's just average. Looking at Luke McCaffrey, whatever. Malik Neighbors, I think he's special. Quarterback concerns long term, though. I think you have to take the Nico Collins side. I think you have to.
I agree with that. Let me ask you this. This is just for fun. If Luke McCaffrey was Lad McConkey, would you still take the A side?
No, if it was Lad McConkey, I'm definitely going to the Neighbor side.
That's what I thought. And that's why, like, I started off like, hey, man, yeah, I'm going to take the... And I said, hold on. That's Luke McCaffrey, not Lad McConkey.
Yep. Yeah, if it's Lad McConkey, I go down there, and I know Anthony would feel the same way because I think he's a Georgia Bulldogs fan, so he would take Georgia Bulldogs, Lad McConkey all day long. But yeah, man, I think there's more value on that top side, even though Neighbors is probably the most enticing piece in this entire deal. Give me Nico, Rhamondre in the first. That's the way I lean.
Same here.
All right, so that's all we have for you guys today. If you did submit a trade in the Discord, thank you for submitting your trades. Thank you for letting us review them. If you guys want to submit any future trades on the Discord, you guys can do that. There is a Discord link down below. Also, make sure you guys are liking and subscribing to this channel, liking this video, subscribing to the channel. That way you get all of the future content moving forward. And starting this week, this is the first video of the week of July. We are now 5 videos a week, Monday through Friday. A mix of redraft, dynasty, best ball content, all of that stuff as we slowly approach the redraft season. Don't be worried if you're here for the redraft stuff. I mean, if you're here for the dynasty stuff will continue coming all year long. We don't get away from that. I know that there's some channels out here that do dynasty in the off season, then they do
we
redraft.
Ain't got no off season, man.
There's no off season, man.
Off season, let's talk dynasty.
Yeah, the dynasty will come year round. That's the way it's going to be. But yeah, like the video, subscribe, do all that good stuff. And War, you're making some content as well. Where can they find you at?
Just like there's no off season in Let's Talk Dynasty, there's no off season in professional wrestling. And that's what we cover over at the Crimson Mass Show. Right now, our content has slowed down just a little bit as we reorganize some things and, deal with some old YouTube stuff. But we coming back. We're going to be bigger. We're going to be faster. We're going to be stronger than ever. So go ahead and add us on the Crimson Mass Show, where you could check out MFGD's posting some content about WWE and AEW. Let's go.
There you go. And as always, all of that stuff will always be linked in the description. There's always my Twitter account, War's Twitter account, his YouTube account, all of that stuff. All of the social media links that you need are down below. So if you want to go check that out, go check that out. But next time we are here on Let's Talk Dynasty, I think we need to tap into that video we talked about a couple of weeks ago, War. I think we need to do the blank resume player comparisons, where I bring up a couple guys and we talk about their resumes, who we would take. I think that's what we should do for the next one.
Sounds fun, man. I'm ready.
All right, man. Well, we'll do that on the next one. But we have nothing else for you guys today. So thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next episode. Till then, peace out.
Wow.